Episode 5 from America's Test Kitchen's book, Bread Illustrated, on page 55 is Italian bread. And hopefully we end up with that. So let's give it a shot. This is a same day bread and we're going to use our stand mixer. First step, let's measure some flour. So one of the things I realized I was doing was I was converting the volume measurements that are in this book. For example, it says 3 cups of flour. And I was converting that into what I know a cup of flour is approximately 120 grams. But what I should have been doing was taking their weight measure, which is 16.5 ounces, and I should have converted that to grams because they're not using the same cup measure that I would have used, which is the problem of using cup measurements when you're doing something like baking, because the weight of this flour is 468 grams. But if I had done it the old way, I'd have said, well, 3 cups of flour is 120 times 3 is 360, and I'd be 100 grams light. And why does that matter? Because when you put the right amount of liquid in, the wrong amount of flour, you end up with a dough that isn't right. And that ain't right. So, we're not doing that. We're getting smart, or smarter. But that's what this is about. This is about learning how to bake. I'm not a baker by trade. What am I? A retired car salesman. So, you know, I'm learning as I go, and you get to learn with me. Or not. It's up to you what you do. I'm having fun. That's right. I'm having fun. And, you know, if you can't have fun doing it, then either figure out how to make it fun or find something else to do.
Change channel.
That's right. They want me to use 1.5 teaspoons of yeast. And that's almost it. Almost. Need a little more. Perfect. And what else? 1.5 teaspoons of salt. So I've said in the past that when it comes to like 1.5 teaspoons of salt or yeast or stuff like that, you could figure it out and say, oh, well, a teaspoon of yeast is, or a teaspoon and a half of yeast is about a little bit less than 5 grams, but just use a teaspoon measure. Save yourself the trouble. 1.5 teaspoons of salt. That's a half. So another half makes what? A whole. And one more half makes 1.5. And that's too much. And I don't want it salty. So there. Boom. Now what? Whisk this together. I can do that. Watch. Whisk away. It's like I'm whisking away all my troubles. In about 10 seconds, the timer's going to go off, and I'm going to take a loaf of bread out of the oven. I made some whole wheat, 100% whole wheat sourdough bread in a loaf pan earlier today from a different book that I have. It's called The Perfect Loaf, and it's all about sourdough. And so far, I've been having a lot of fun with that too. Alright, that's done. This goes in the stand mixer. That goes in the sink. This bread comes out of the oven. That's whole wheat sourdough. The oats on top are for decoration and to eat, obviously, but they're not mixed in with the dough. The dough is 100% whole wheat flour. Enough about that. Let's continue on with our Italian bread. I need beer. Why do I need beer? Because that's what the recipe says. It says use beer. And what we're going to use the beer for is to give it some flavor. And they want me to use 8 ounces, which is 227 grams.
And the alcohol burns out.
The alcohol does burn out. Oh, damn. I overshot. Guess what? Pour it back in. I bought beer in a can. I thought it was Busch, but it was Rolling Rock. And I used some of it for the last episode, which was the almost no knead bread, which turned out pretty darn good, even though I screwed up because I didn't have enough flour. So it was a very wet dough, and it was supposed to be pretty well hydrated, but not as hydrated as I made it. But it still turned out pretty well. It was tasty. It's all gone.
We ate it.
Yeah, we did. It was tasty.
It's good toasted.
Mm-hmm. There you go. 227. What else? 3 ounces of water at room temperature. Three ounces of water at room temperature. How much is that? 85 grams. Reset the scale to 0. Weigh out 85 grams of room temperature water. Tap water's fine. I don't subscribe to the notion that you gotta use some kind of other distilled or whatever. I don't go there. Let's see, blah blah blah. What is this? Oil. Extra virgin olive oil, 25 grams. I'm not going to be able to take this out, so I'm going to go slow. 7, 10, 15, 20. Oh my goodness, I overshot by 1 gram. I think I'll be alright. Lower the mixer. Now, they want me to mix this on the slowest speed, which is good. Start out on the slow speed. Dump that in. You don't have to get fancy schmancy. Okay. We're going with the mixer. It's at slow speed. This should take 2 minutes. It'll get us mixed. And then we're going to scrape down the bowl. We're going to make sure that no dry flour remains. And then we're going to knead it on a higher speed for 8 minutes. I'm going to pause the video while that goes, because you don't need to sit here and watch this thing go round and round and round for all that time. I mean, if you really want to, watch it when you do it, which you should. But 8 minutes of kneading dough on a video, it's making me crazy just saying it. But here it comes. It's coming together. Coming together. See how it's slowly pulling all the flour in, coming away from the side. This is on the slowest speed that the mixer goes. Let's see if I can get that. There it is. It's on the slowest speed. So the books that I've read about baking bread, and I've read 3 or 4 by now, they're all pretty consistent about this. There's no reason to get your mixer when you're making bread above the 2nd speed. There's no benefit to it. So I'm going to turn it off. That looks good. There's really nothing to scrape down. So now I'm going to turn it up. I'm going to go to the 2nd speed. Whoa! If I can. got to be able to operate the machine. So this is what it's going to do now for the next 8 minutes. Hey Google, set a timer for 8 minutes. Alright, we'll be back. I'm going to pause this video. So, as you can see, the dough is clean off the sides of the bowl, no problem there. It's stuck to the bottom a little bit, but that's normal. It usually won't pull off the bottom of the bowl. I mean, at least in my limited experience, that's not an issue. And the timer's up. And so we can turn this off. And then next we're going to lightly flour our surface. So I didn't say this in the beginning, but this is bread flour. And the difference between all-purpose flour and bread flour is that bread flour has a higher protein content. And it's the protein that forms the gluten. It's the gluten that, when properly formed, gives the bread the structure so that the carbon dioxide that the yeast produces has something to create the bubbles in the bread. That can be a fine, sort of a lattice work, right? So it's like a foam made out of bread, made out of flour. So anyway, this recipe calls for bread flour because it's a relatively short rise, I guess. I'm not exactly sure why they said use bread flour, but that's what they said to do, and by golly, that's what I'm doing. And I think I mentioned in my other, one of the other videos that I use King Arthur flour. I just like it, and lots of other people like it too, from what I can gather. So that's what I use. It's worked out well for me, and I'm using a. I mentioned that I've read some books, 4, and 2 of them are King Arthur books. They've got a couple of baking books that I've got that I enjoy quite a bit. So they've also got YouTube videos that'll teach you how to do a lot of things. Extensive recipes on their website. Good stuff. So now we'll turn the dough out. We've got a little bit of flour on the board, and we'll just knead this for 30 seconds until it comes together, which it already is, and make it form a ball. So some people use a scraper to do this, and they push the dough with the scraper and they roll it with the hand, but I use one hand, and I use this hand, and I push it underneath so that it's forming that ball. And all you're trying to do is get it so that it's a nice smooth surface. And we're going to put it in the bowl, and we're going to put it seam side down in this bowl that we're going to lightly grease. Woohoo! That's that. Cover lightly. Put somewhere to rise. I'll put it over here. And while I'm doing that, let me show you how this bread looks. This is whole wheat bread. I'm dropping oats. Whole wheat bread. This has got to cool for a few hours, and then I get to taste it, see how we did. All right, I'm going to clean my work area. I'm going to let that dough rise for an hour and a half to 2 hours until it's more or less doubled in size, which I like this bowl because I can see where the dough is, and I go, oh, okay, there's a mark right here. It says 1.5 liter, and when I hold the bowl up eye level, the very top of the dough is at 1.5 liters. I'm looking for it to double in size. That doesn't mean that it's going to go all the way to the top, but I can see what's going on, so that's why I like this bowl. The other reason I like it is because it was very affordable. So if you don't have any clear plastic bowls that have got some kind of markings on the side, I recommend that you get one because it makes life easier. Alright, I'll be back in an hour and a half to 2 hours. Alright, so the dough has risen nicely. It's been about 2 hours. I'm going to turn it out onto the table. And I'm going to form it into the shape, and then it's going to rise for another hour or so, and then it'll get baked. So it's 7 p.m. and it's supposed to bake for, I think, 45 minutes, something like that. So hopefully by 9 or 9:30, which is about the time that I usually call it a day. This will be done, which will be fine because it's got to sit and rest. This is such a nice dough. They want me to so they say get this to about a 10 inch by 10 inch. You can press it out, but be gentle. You don't want to smash it. We've allowed this dough to rest and to build some structure and get some air in it. There's no sense in manhandling it. I'm calling that 10 by 10. So just to pull it in like this, bada bing, bada boom, like that. And now we're going to fold it over, starting working towards the end, gently fold those in, and we're going to roll it gently. Again, we're trying to not, we're not making a pizza dough here. We're going to pinch this seam. And we're going to roll it out. They say aim for about 15 inches. So I will. Practically there. Okay. It's supposed to end up in a torpedo shape, so this is the seam side. That side's going to go down. This is a pizza peel. The instructions say take a piece of parchment, put it thusly, and gently roll this onto your hands, transfer it to the peel, gently reshape. I'm probably messing with this way too much, so I'm going to leave it alone now. Is it still about 15 inches? No, it's about 13, but it's going to rise. We'll see. It's supposed to increase by about 1/3. Lightly grease a piece of plastic, cover the dough. We don't want a hard skin to form on the dough before it goes in the oven. If it were to, then it doesn't get the oven spring. So when you put this dough, even though it'll rise now, however much it rises in the next 30 minutes to an hour, it'll rise more once it goes in the oven. So you don't want a skin to form on the top because that'll prevent that oven spring, they call it, that rising that happens when it gets in the oven. So you want to cover it with a piece of plastic that's got a little bit of spray on it. This is a pizza stone. It's going in the oven. And we're going to preheat the oven, 450 degrees. Bake. Start. Preheat the oven. That's done. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, so the only thing left to do is to score the top of the dough with a sharp knife, and then place it on the hot, mist it, slide the parchment onto that hot pizza stone, and bake. And it's supposed to bake for about a half an hour, or until it reaches 205 to 210 degrees, which we'll use our thermometer. We'll stick it in. It'll say 205 degrees to 210 degrees. It'll be done. That should take 25 minutes to half an hour. The time right now is 7:21, so sometime between 7:50 and 8:20, this should be sufficiently risen, proved, if you will, to go into the oven and bake. So I will shoot the video of me putting it in the oven as best I can. It's quite easy. You just use the peel and the parchment slides right off. The parchment goes on the stone. The parchment stays in the oven. That's what it's designed to do. And that's that. But let me show you this whole wheat bread that I baked. There's the slice of it.
God, it's good.
It's delicious. It's got honey in it. It's quite tasty.
It's a meal in itself.
It's real bread. So that's that. Okay, I'm going to pause the video and I'll be back in 30 minutes to an hour. Show you the approved dough. We'll score it, put it in the oven, we'll bake it, and that'll be good. So it's been not quite 25 minutes, and this has risen. They said it was going to wait until it's 30% more. Well, this is more than 30% more. So into the oven it's going to go. I will, I'm going to score the dough first. Here we go. That's fine, and it's dandy. Now let me see if I can get the oven shot here. That's that. It's in the oven. And we'll give it, hey Google, set a timer for 25 minutes. And we'll see how it does.
Starting now.
205 to 210 degrees. Well, there it is, out of the oven after 30 minutes. I turned it once when it was about 13 minutes. The timer went off at 25. I checked the temperature. It was at 201, so I left it in for another 5 minutes, more or less. And the temperature checked out at 207, almost 208. It's supposed to be between 205 and 210, so that you know it's done. And so this is done, and now it needs to sit and rest and cool for a couple of hours. They say 3 hours. But you can see the back of the bottom of the loaf, and look at that. Pretty awesome. So let it cool and then cut it, and it'll be delicious. So when I cut it, I'll take a still shot of that and include it at the end of the video. So there you go, Italian bread from the recipe in Bread Illustrated, the book from America's Test Kitchen.